Hello, everyone, and welcome to Real PR with me, Fiona Scott. I hope you're having a good day or a good week and a good month. Today, I am joined by Andy, who's a client and a friend, and we're going to talk all things health and safety. And as a journalist, I used to get some of my best stories around health and safety issues. Not great for the companies concerned, but good stories for journalists. And it's one of the things we'll cover today. So let's get into it.
Hello, Andrew Wilkinson, co-director of Secure Safety Solutions. Here to talk about all things health and safety. So it's quite exciting.
Tell us how you got into the whole health and safety world,
Interesting.
Andy.
I don't think anybody ever chooses to get into health and safety. You kind of end up falling into it. I was working at Heathrow at the time as a security manager, and it kind of landed on my desk as a bit of project work. And I kind of thought, oh no, I don't fancy this. This seems quite heavy. This seems a bit too compliance driven. But absolutely fell in love with it. And that was probably 14 years ago, 15 years ago now. Fell in love with it, did some training, internal training, did some national training, and yeah, just fell in love with it and moved to the central safety team there. So it became a full-time role rather than just kind of like sideline projects. And then we started the business and it all went from there.
Okay, so let's roll back to Heathrow Airport.
Yeah.
If anyone's listening to this don't know, you've heard of Heathrow Airport, one of the most famous and biggest airports in the world. Give us a flavour then about what kind of issues, obviously not betraying confidences or anything like that, but give us what kind of issues might you have had to deal with?
Oh, so many. It was like its own little city. So there was so many different things happened, whether it's things like, passenger incidents falling down escalators or trapping body parts in certain places, in lift doors or, wherever you have a environment where there's members of the public present, there's often going to be kind of weird and wonderful incidents and some that you look at and you go, didn't even see that coming. How did you manage to do that? But it does. It brings an opportunity to look at it and go, right, well, how do we prevent something like that from happening again? So yeah, it was very, very varied, all the way through to the staff. Obviously, because quite high risk areas, they had mechanical areas, baggage areas, the security teams. So yeah, there was quite a lot of different things. And obviously, when you then get down to the airfield itself, that it's a very, very high risk area. With it's moving vehicles, moving aircraft. So yeah, there's lots of different things. We had falls from height, we had crushing injuries. A whole range of different incidents. But definitely, I know it's a bit cliche, but no day was the same because there was just so much going on. I really enjoyed it, and I do miss it. I do miss that environment.
I think people would understand that somewhere like Heathrow Airport, planes, people, there's a ton of risks around it, but they might not think that their little business has any particular risks. Do you think, now that you are working predominantly in the small business sector, that people are still quite unaware and uneducated around risks? Talk a bit about that.
Yeah, definitely. And the same thing applies, regardless of the size of your organization, the same law applies, the same legislation applies. It's just the how it applies is quite different. And that's where people like us help. We help to translate what that law and legislation means for that individual client or person. So yeah, it could well be that it's everything from display screen equipment for your office workers. Are we doing home worker assessments if they're going to be working from home? Have we supplied them with the right equipment? All of these things that predominantly we're doing it to keep people safe, but secondary also to protect the business as well. We want to protect the business, the responsible person, make sure that they're executing their legal duty, which in essence keeps them safe. Keeps them safe and secure, keeps their employees safe and secure. It is very much, people do think, oh well, I'm low risk. There's only 7 of us in the team. We are quite low risk environment. We're just in an office. Like, well, so what is it you're doing then? It's, oh no, well nothing. Nothing. Well, there are still things that you need to do. There are still processes to follow. There are still things that have to be done to make sure we're keeping our team safe. Because even sitting at a workstation that isn't set up for you, over time that's going to cause injury. Where there's injuries, potential liability, and we want to make sure we close that. So yeah.
When I worked in TV, I was very super aware about health and safety and risk assessment because we were out and about filming in lots of different places, lots of different environments, and we always had to have a risk assessment for every single one of those, and it was time consuming, and it sometimes felt like a burden to have to do it, Andy. But what I do not recall in all the time I worked in TV, I always felt like I was making it up, trying to use common sense. There was no expertise that I recall being able to tap into. Obviously, that's a corporate world. So let's give a flavour. If a small business owner comes to you, paint a picture. Let's just say there's someone like me. They work from home. They've got an office space at home. They've got 3 or 4 freelancers that I work with. Where do you start with health and safety with someone like me?
So I'd say making sure that we've got a backbone there. So things like health and safety policies, documentation is key, but that absolutely isn't the be all and end all. We've got to make sure that although we have the processes, procedures, the risk assessments, your policies in place, it's all about, well, how's that passed over to the team? How are the team informed of, ways that they can keep themselves safe and the control measures? So it's not just about having it on paper. It's about, well, how does that translate to the team, and how do they actively put in place, I guess, kind of live, eat and breathe it on a kind of day to day, because that's what's going to keep people safe. It's not just having a folder full of documents. It's about making sure that the team understand what's in those documents. And that's why, having generic risk assessments or generic policies or whatever it might be, it catches people out. People think, oh, I need to have this off, I can just download this off the internet, or I can just copy this business's ones. But if it's not specific to your organization and your people, it's not necessarily worth the paper it's printed on. And actually, you might also be trying to aim too high sometimes, because you don't necessarily want to have to put in place the maximum amount of control measures. That might not be suitable for your business. That might not be suitable for your team. So actually, it's about looking and saying, well, how far do we go? You're not going to put in place all of the control measures that a manufacturing company of 50 people are going to put in place, but what do we have to do? So that's where having that expertise is really key, because it's not about just saying, well, what's the maximum that we can do? It's about saying, well, what's the balanced approach for our organization? Because if we go too far, and if we have 50 documents that every staff member has to read, are they going to read it? Probably not. It's just going to be a bit of paper that sits there. It might look good, but it doesn't actually mean anything, and no one's going to read it, understand it, use it. So yeah. I
know, just the few months we've been working together, that you like the holistic approach, don't you?
Very much.
You and Kim, you will help if you can, but you really don't want people turning up when things have gone wrong, and then you're in a backpedal situation. You want to work with businesses that are more forward thinking than that. So explain your ethos and thinking around that.
Yeah, very much so. So one thing that I often say to people, whether it's our health and safety services, fire services, whatever it might be, when they start saying, oh, what, we've just about managed to afford you, we've just about managed, and we're not expensive by any means, but we've put a little bit of money aside to be able to pay for health and safety. I often say, well, have you put any other contingency funds in place? Because if we start coming up with things and say, well, actually, you could probably do with investing in this, or looking at this servicing, or replacing your PPE, or whatever it might be, if you've not got the funds to kind of start doing that either, then why are you doing step 1 if you can't afford to do step 2, 3, 4, and 5? So, but again, in saying that, yeah, it's not about trying to put in the maximum amount of protection. It's not about us coming in and saying to a business, oh yeah, well, to make everything safe, you need to spend another £20,000, because that's not going to work for a lot of businesses. So yeah, that holistic view is really important. It's about really looking at the team, getting a good snapshot of where are they now, where have they come from as well, because they may have made some internal progressions themselves, but where are they now? Where is it we want to get to? And let's look at a realistic plan. It's not about getting there tomorrow. It's not about getting there next week and saying, health and safety, job done. It's a continuous journey, and as long as we're making progress, then that's what we want. Progression, not perfection. I like to go.
Oh, I like that. I think that could be an Andyism.
It could be an
couldn't
Andyism.
it? Yeah. Look out for some Andyisms. Okay, so let's talk about. I know, having worked with you, that you've dealt with some pretty dramatic things. But nothing in life and nothing in business is risk-free. You can never be risk-free, can you, Andy?
No, absolutely right. Yeah. In everything we do, there's an element of risk. And it's funny, actually, someone said to me once, I was delivering some training, some Irish training, and someone said to me, oh, you must hate me because I ride a motorcycle. I said, well, why would I hate you because you ride a motorcycle? And he said, oh, well, they're really dangerous, aren't they? I said, yeah, but do you understand the risk? Yeah. I said, but do you understand the risk in the winter and, the additional risks? And he said, well, yeah. I said, well, there we go. That's all I ask. I'm not there to stop you having fun. As long as you understand the risk and you accept the risk, that's fine. Who am I to tell you that you shouldn't ride a motorcycle? I personally wouldn't ride a motorcycle. That's more because of my balance than anything else. But yeah, as long as people understand the risks and accept it, then that's all I ask. I'm not there to make their judgment for them. I'm just there to make sure that they fully understand the level of risk that they're operating at and then providing advice on it.
So within health and safety then, there is an element of personal responsibility, because that could be quite hard to measure. How do you manage that?
Yeah, it's difficult, especially I think typically the business owner will understand the personal responsibility. I think it's drummed into business owners that they're ultimately responsible for pretty much everything. Where I sometimes find a bit of disparity is where we speak to supervisors, line managers, senior managers, and they don't realise necessarily the amount of personal liability that they have within their roles as well. Because we've seen it in many different case studies where people have been injured, seriously injured or killed, and that senior manager or supervisor has faced personal charges as well. There was quite a famous one back in 2018. There was a manager of a landfill operation. He lifted somebody up on a crane grabber up to a shredder to clear a jam. The chap unfortunately fell into it. It wasn't isolated. There was no safe ways of working, and he was killed. The manager that lifted him up there wasn't supervising him at the time. He didn't know where he'd gone, so carried on processing waste. They never found his body, which was pretty horrendous.
Awful.
It does, yeah, it is. But that person was sent to prison, as as he should have been, because it's just one of those where even at any level, we've all got a level of personal responsibility and legal responsibility. It just changes. I think the common misconception is that it's always on the director. It's always there. They're the only ones that are going to be personally liable, and that's simply not the case.
I remember it being brought home to me as a freelancer. I covered a colliery disaster in South Wales. I covered the court case, not the actual incident, where coal miners were drilling through a coalface and didn't know there was thousands of litres of water behind that coalface. Wow. And some were drowned. And the person that owned the mine was in court accused of corporate manslaughter. He was found not guilty. It was a very complex case, and I think it's quite hard to prosecute that. But the one thing that I learned watching and covering that case is there weren't no winners there, because that guy was, that is with him his whole life. I was surprised he was even still standing. And I remember looking at him thinking, even though you've got off, as it were, you are carrying this for the rest of your life. You are in prison anyway.
Yeah, of course. It's almost, sometimes it can feel like a double punishment, can't it? They're already going to be punishing themselves. But then I guess there also has to be another level of justice as well. That's what our judicial system's for, isn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, absolutely, having to live with something like that. And that's often the kind of the road that I go down with people when I'm trying to get them, sometimes difficult conversations with people that don't necessarily want to follow the rules. They see it as a rule. Why have I got to wear my PPE? Why have I got to follow this safe working practice? Why have I got to, you kind of say, well, imagine that seriously hurting, injuring or killing somebody. How would you feel? Oh, but that's never going to happen. Well, that's what,
Yeah.
Hindsight's a wonderful
thing. How many people say that?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
And when you see it played out in front of you, as I did, and knowing I was going to report on it, so there's another level of horror there for all concerned, because it's now going to be covered in newspapers, radio and TV. It was a big story at the time. And you, as a journalist, even though I was covering the story, and I have no regrets about doing so, I was conscious that it was another layer of punishment, almost. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Okay, so I'm going to talk to you now about being a business owner. Now that you're into it, you've made that choice to set up in your business. Do you now see yourself as a businessman?
Oh, crikey. I don't think I ever have seen myself as a businessman. I've always said I'm a health and safety consultant. I'm a health and safety advisor, whatever label you want to give it. I'm a health and safety person. That's always been kind of my core. And I think I don't think I know. I fell into the trap of, oh, I love doing what I do. Why don't I do it for myself? And then you start doing it, and then you start realizing, yeah, there's all this other business stuff to sort out as well. Okay, I've got to sort accounts out, and I've got to sort out some HR bits, and I've got to also have all these other processes in place. And before you know it, it starts to take you away actually from kind of doing the core thing that you wanted to do in the first place. So yeah, it's not until you kind of go through that you realise, oh yeah, maybe.
Maybe you are a business owner. Because it's a different mindset though, isn't it?
Very much so.
You cannot just, in order to do the thing you love, as a business owner, you have to do the other stuff too.
That's true. But that's where my wife comes into it as well. So Kim, when she joined us, it was about 2.5 years ago, formally about 2.5 years ago now, and really took on a lot more of the kind of the business strategy, the business side of things. That really did help me to almost kind of step away from some of that. Obviously not all of it at all, but some of that to really kind of focus in on the health and safety side of things, which is where my heart lies.
So, okay, let's talk about navigating, working with your wife. I work with my husband, Steve, quite a lot, now more than ever. So, yeah, pros and cons.
Definitely. Well, yeah, it's great. I mean, don't get me wrong. Working with your other half is brilliant. It's I think in a normal working relationship where you don't work together, you can sometimes be like ships in the night in this day and age, where you, especially juggling children, you have to work at opposite ends of the day. One's not around in the evening, one's not around in the morning. Sometimes, I used to do shift work, so the weekends were open to abuse there as well by shift patterns, and yeah, we definitely see a lot more of each other, which is great. And you definitely have to have a special kind of relationship, I'd say, to spend so much time together, because some days, yeah, you are, from morning all the way through the day into the evening, and that's where I think having internal boundaries is quite important. Otherwise, and we have found that you just talk work all the time. Where you don't have that 9 to 5. Once the kids go to bed, laptops are out, we're talking about work and work problems and how to solve this, and before you know it, it's midnight. So of course that's fine every now and again, but I think it is important just to get that fine balance that we're also mum and dad. So yeah, it's I think it's important to to have those boundaries and.
So what are the boundaries then, Andy?
Well, I think it is all around kind of work timings as well. So making sure that once the work times, once we get to the end of the day, we do have a good window of kind of time that we don't work. And normally that's kind of from school kid pick up through to kind of their bedtime. Yes, occasionally we'll get the laptop out and we'll be discussing issues and stuff in the evening, but we do try and minimise that as much as possible, because we want to be present there for the kids as well. We don't want to be talking work or talking shop, some say the whole time. But sometimes it is inevitable. If there's been something that's happened, something that needs a bit more of our attention, then naturally that will kind of happen. Or quite often ideas and things seems to pop into my head at random times, so I'll just go, oh, what about this? And you have to kind of sometimes capture yourself or rely on the other person to say, yep, it's a good idea. Park it, write it down. Let's discuss it later or tomorrow, because otherwise we can both go down rabbit holes. I think we're both that kind of person where, yeah, once you get an idea or you go, oh yeah, that sounds pretty good, before you know it, you've lost 3 hours. So yeah, we do have to be quite controlled with it. Okay,
let's talk marketing and PR then, because that doesn't come naturally when your expertise is health and safety. So what do you do to market yourself? And let's not talk about me and PR at the moment, but what were you doing to market yourself before?
That goes my answer. I was going to say, we use Fiona Scott. So it was mainly just social media. So it was just a little bit on Facebook, mainly kind of targeting on LinkedIn. And we didn't really know a lot about the kind of processes of doing that either, really. It was kind of an occasional post on LinkedIn, maybe once a week. The content, was kind of quite broad. And that was kind of it, really. A lot of what we did was, in-person networking. That's how we kind of grew the business from the start. So that's all I really did. Yeah, there wasn't really much else other.
And that's how we met, of course.
It was, yeah, absolutely.
Networking. And I always say to people, if you're networking, you are doing PR because it's public relations. So let's talk about that for a minute. What value has in-person networking brought to the business?
Oh, it's been the game changer for it. It's something that, because we started the business just before COVID, so the worst time to start up a business was September 2019, when obviously we're into a lockdown 5 months later. But it really helped us. It was a support network going through COVID. It was, a group of people that were also going through the similar struggles that you could bounce ideas off of, problems off of, and people that just kind of had your back as well, and without judgment, which I think was really important. You couldn't turn around to new clients at the time and kind of express any of that worry or concern. So having that group of people there that got it was invaluable. And hence why we've always done it. It's not something that I plan to stop. It's not something that I plan to slow down on, because just having those in-person relationships are really, really important.
I agree, and I've done networking the whole time, and it's part of my PR strategy for my business. One, because I'm extrovert, so I like to be around people, but also two, because face-to-face networking and referrals are still the most powerful form of business. Sounds weird me saying that because of PR, but it's true. So moving on from that then, at what point did you and Kim think to yourself, actually, working with Fiona might be of value to us? Was there a key thing, or was it gradual? Talk to me about that.
Yeah, so I think it's about hearing a lot of the success stories that, from yourself, but also the people that you've worked with as well around the kind of opportunities that have come up. You start seeing people's faces online, and as I saw different news articles, different publications with people, being the kind of subject matter expert in there, and there was always a little bit of me that thought, well, I can do that. I've got my my view on this. I can always put something together, and I've got things I'd like to share as well. But it was always well, how do you even start with that? Where do you just message a newspaper? No idea. So and that's where your specialities really came to shine then, and it was it's been great. We've done quite a few now.
Haven't we? So with you, we've done that. Well, we got lucky with you because we had quite a bit of coverage around thought leadership really quickly, didn't we?
Yeah, very.
That's
very
double
quick.
page spread.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it doesn't always happen, folks. Just saying. But also, you've also made the decision, haven't you, in sort of 2026, 2027, to start raising money for charity, which is something I always encourage my clients to do. Really be part of your community, really give back. So tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, definitely. So we're supporting the Wiltshire Treehouse Foundation, and they're a locally based charity, and they help support families through a kind of bereavement process, which a lot of charities do. However, these guys really support children with special educational needs, children with special needs. Sometimes, it's a difficult conversation to have with any children anyway, talking about bereavement. But if you put into the mix any other kind of special additional need, that can just make it even more challenging for somebody that is already going through and suffering loss and bereavement themselves. So they do some fantastic work, and it took us a while to kind of find someone that really kind of lived up to our kind of values and really wanted to make a difference for, and to help and contribute towards. And once we found them, kind of both Kim and I looked at each other, and we just knew it was the right people to support, because they do an absolutely fantastic job. Yeah,
and choosing something hyper local in the community, I always think that you move the dial a bit more for them.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, they break down how much a certain amount of money would support them, and it's you kind of think, right, well, that's you can kind of quantify the difference you're making. Actually, right, this month we've been able to supply or help provide 5 family sessions. For so it's great being able to do it rather than just kind of a bit of money going into a very large pot. It's nice to be able to to make a bit more of a bigger difference, really.
And we were lucky. We got coverage on that as well, which helps. Often I found, Andy, and I don't know if you or Kim felt like this, I do find that business owners think, well, you should help. You should help for the cause, not for the applause. Totally forgetting how valuable it is for the charity for you to say we're supporting them, because I always think it encourages others to support as well.
Exactly. Yeah, definitely. And it's one of the first things that we did after that initial meeting with the with the team there was all around, well, who else do we know that we could help get involved? What clients of ours can we work with to help bring awareness to? We've spoken to our children's schools, and we've brought some awareness to them, because again, it's what a great link, when we're looking at supporting local families around the local education system. So yeah, it's very much a wider impact, and it isn't just a work thing. We're talking about it with family, we're talking about it with friends, and yeah, it's definitely, I think when you support somebody like that, or an organisation like that, it's very easy just to have natural conversations with people about it and to raise that awareness. It's because a lot of people still don't know about these charities, and
That's right.
it's the awareness just isn't necessarily there until you need them. They're not. You don't necessarily know that they're there.
That's right.
So,
And then but you hope that they're the kind of organisation, bit like Wiltshire and Bath Air Ambulance. You kind of want them to be there, but you never want to have to use them.
Absolutely right. Yeah, absolutely right. And it's inevitably, it's one of those where there's a chance that we're going to all have to use or could do with that support at some point. But it's just about knowing that that's available. Not everyone's going to want to, or necessarily need the support, but it's about making sure that, right, well, I know that option's there if I do need that extra help, or my child seems to be taking this slightly harder than I would have expected, or how I would have processed it. So who can I speak to, that's a bit of an expert in that kind of area. So yeah, it's not just for the fundraising; it's also to raise the awareness of their services to help support local people as well.
Okay, so let's talk about the future of Secure Safety Solutions.
Mm-hmm.
What are your plans?
Oh, blimey, $1 million question, isn't it?
Yeah.
What are your plans?
Yeah.
I think it's just very, and this can sound a bit beige sometimes, but it's very much of the same. And, it's not a case of I've got all these massive, plans of changing lots of things. I think the things that we've been doing has been really successful, as in we've been able to support clients through HSE enforcement, through fire service enforcement, stuff that's come their way. They've been able to quite easily deal with because of the support that we've been giving them. So all I really want to do is do more of that.
Yeah.
Which doesn't sound very exciting, does it? But it is just a case of being able to get in the room and just speak to more people that could use the services that we provide. It's companies that are looking to grow. It's companies that are looking to expand their services. They could be looking to do different types of activities, and quite often health and safety is the last thing that they look for. But as long as they're looking for it, it's fine. But yeah, just being able to support people going through that journey is really satisfying. So
I think what you're saying is working with companies that actually care about people, whether those people are the staff or customers.
Absolutely, yeah. Because if you don't care about it, it's one of those things that it will only be a reaction measure. And of course, we get calls all the time saying, this person's injured, I'm now being sued, or I've had a compensation claim come in, can you help? I said, no, you don't need me, you need a solicitor. Because it's too late. You've already, that boat sailed. If you want to talk to me afterwards about, the overall safety of the business, fine, but don't call us just to try and get you out of a problem that, you've allowed to happen. So
similar conversation with us with crisis management. Why do you expect that I can make it go away? I can't.
Yeah, of course.
We are managing.
Yeah, definitely.
We are managing it. So brilliant. Thank you so much, Andy.
No problem.
Now, if anyone wants to find you, ask you questions, drop you a line, or are thinking, actually, we need to take our health and safety more seriously, or at least get it reviewed, especially if they've downloaded policies and procedures off the internet for their business, how do they find you?
So we're on LinkedIn, obviously, and then drop us an email, info@Secure Safety Solutions, or obviously go to our website, www.securesafetysolutions.co.uk. Got contact forms on there, got a whole host of different information packages on there as well. And I always say to people, if it's just a question that someone's got, please do call, text, email, carrier pigeon, whatever they want to do. We're more than happy just to give a bit of advice. If someone's not sure about something, I'd much rather they ask the question than get it wrong. And yeah, that's it really.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much, Andy.
No problem. Thank you.
I hope you've enjoyed today's show with us, and I hope everyone's enjoyed listening. You can get in touch with Andy all the various ways that he said. Don't be afraid to ask the question, because it could cost you dear if you don't. I really hope you've enjoyed that episode and you've learned something from it. So if you've got a health and safety question, get in touch with Andy and Kim. They'll be really happy to answer your questions. Much better to ask the question before there's a problem and sort things out than later on when it might be too late. So please do that. If you want to find out more about me and my team, it's scottmedia.uk, or we've got a Facebook group, Fiona Scott's PR Tribe, which is totally free to join, or you can find me on LinkedIn. Thanks for watching. Until next time.